Before we begin today, we'd like to acknowledge that we are on Indigenous territory, and in so doing, acknowledge the many nations, both known and unknown, such as the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Wendat peoples who have lived on and cared for this land for thousands of years and continue to do so. We also acknowledge our identity as settlers, those of us that are, and our role in reconciliation. We're coming together today from many areas of the country and province, so if anyone would like to acknowledge the land you are joining us from, you may do so at your leisure. Welcome to the part 2 of the Essentials for Successful Strategies on the LGBT plus Travel Market Ready seminar. This is the second half of a roughly hour and 45 minute to 2 hour long seminar. We are going a little bit further, faster through it today because we are lacking some interaction. But thank you for joining myself, Lauren Christie, and Carson Robertson as we start section 2. Section 2 is all about the Tourism Development Toolkit. So we are going to get into these sections and help you by starting with the essential elements for successful LGBT plus tourism development and marketing strategies. There are 6 essential elements for destinations and tourism businesses to become LGBT plus travel market ready, and we will go through these. The first and most important factor to consider when developing your travel market strategy is to identify and empower one or more local leaders or champions from the LGBT plus community and or your tourism business. It is vitally important to have a champion. It is super important to have representation from LGBT plus community. That is vital, but getting everybody on board is really key to engage with this market. The LGBT plus tourism champion should be someone either in the community or a strong ally, but someone who can really tell everyone and get everyone on board about the elements that are important for this market. We talked earlier about Montreal, and Charles Lapointe, who was the CEO and president there for many years, is a great example of an LGBT plus tourism champion. He really brought together a lot of the different businesses in Montreal and made Montreal the dynamic queer destination it is today. But it doesn't have to be a CEO. It can be anyone. Another example I love to give is Angela Moore, who was a PR and marketing representative for Tourism Saskatoon. And a few years ago, or many years ago now, I guess, she decided to go after this market and create a strategy on behalf of Tourism Saskatoon. And she brought the community together, and they have done a wonderful job. They have a small LGBT plus history there that they really showcase, and lots of offerings that they've put together and really created something that is very well done. So small or large doesn't matter. The position of the person doesn't matter, but you just need someone to be your champion and pull it all together. So there are six elements, and I'm going to leave it over to Carson to kick it off with us.
All right, thanks, Lauren. So I'll go over the first 3 of these essential elements. So number 1, have an engaged and visible local community. So engage LGBT community leaders, industry champions, and the community at large to guide and provide input in the LGBT tourism development and marketing strategies. So second point there, provide opportunities for the local LGBT communities to participate in the tourism planning, in the meetings, etc. Montreal is actually a great example of this. They really turn to their community and they're supported by Tourism Montreal. I think it's super important for the city to promote their inclusivity and their diversity this way. And it really just helps the local LGBT community provide that information. As well as celebrate and out LGBT community and share its history, culture, people, and stories. Again, Montreal is a great example of this. The first North American gay establishment ever recorded was born in Montreal in 1896. It was an apple and cake shop where men could gather. So that's something that they tried to weave into their history and their culture, and as well as the fact that Quebec was one of the first jurisdictions to prohibit all forms of discrimination based on sexual orientation. So another thing that they do focus on. And the last point, just invite multi-sector LGBT plus and allied businesses and organizations to take the active role in the initiative. So healthcare, social services, educational sectors, etc. The second essential element is establish clear values, vision, and a plan. So working with LGBT tourism leaders, community members, and the stakeholders, establish the values and a clear vision and a plan for the tourism development and marketing strategies. Whistler was able to accomplish a lot through educational initiatives and awareness campaign. The perceived value of Whistler's LGBT communities really did begin to expand in the early 2000s. And in 2009, the resort was considered a strong leader in the LGBT community, and then of course, further solidifying its reputation as host of the Olympic Winter Games. Share plans, strategies, and progress updates with LGBT community, industry stakeholders, and tourism partners, and then regularly review LGBT traveler and community feedback and evaluate those results to adopt the improvements from the community. So I talked about Bristol in the last section of the travel market ready presentation that we did. And it was really talking about how Bristol had limited staff and a limited budget as well. And they were able to utilize the community, and the community provided different points of content that they could upgrade their website on, and really did step up as partners in the community. And lastly, the third essential element that I will discuss is build collaborative local, regional, and broader partnerships. So partner with LGBT and allied organizations and tourism businesses to develop, support, and deliver LGBT tourism products, events, experiences, and programs. I think a really cool example of this is Pink Iceland. I did talk about it in the Iceland case study as well. Pink Iceland is a premier queer-owned and operated special events tour and travel business company in Iceland. And they partnered with Iceland Tourism and now really advocate for them on a global scale. Establish a local regional partnership group to assess current and new LGBT tourism development trends, marketing channels, and collaboration opportunities. And then also develop and build partnerships with neighboring cities and regions to offer day trips and multi-destination LGBT packages. A great example here is what Whistler does. Whistler partners with both Seattle and Vancouver. So really expanding its tourism power to a population of almost 5 million people. And with that, almost 10% being part of the LGBT community. So it really does give Whistler that leverage.
The fourth essential, oh, sorry, Carson, go ahead.
Right. No, I was gonna say on to you for the other three.
Thank you. So the fourth essential element is to provide dedicated investment and support. So you need to offer ongoing LGBT plus inclusion training to the tourism stakeholders and businesses. We've given in the first part a lot of examples of this. It's really key to get everyone to walk that talk. You need to get everybody at all staff levels on board with that training, and it has to be consistent. You can't just do it as a one-off, has to keep going. Ensure employee benefits and supports extend to all LGBT plus identified employees. And that's just very simple things, internal things you can do. So if the heterosexual couple that we're going to throw a wedding shower or baby shower for, do the same for the LGBT plus event that goes on in your office. Whatever the case may be, create a culture of inclusion amongst those employees. Another example is to fund or sponsor LGBT plus tourism initiatives and community groups. And I think it's really important to note that this doesn't have to be a big expenditure. It's not about the amount of money. It's just about partaking. And an example I like to use is I used to work at the Sheridan Centre in Toronto years ago. And during the Pride and Remembrance Run, which was a 5K charitable run during Pride weekend, the Sheraton encouraged its employees to put together a team. So there was about 20 of us that every year went and ran in the run. And all that they would do was promote it internally for people who wanted to do it. They paid for t-shirts for us and invited us back for brunch after. And we fundraised and donated it to the 519 Community Center. You felt good as employees. We were running in the run with our t-shirts on, promoting the Sheridan Center. And again, all in all, it was a great initiative that really did not cost that much. So it's not about the money or the amount of money. You also can look at implementing inclusive procurement policies to buy products and services from LGBT plus certified businesses and other suppliers. And this is where the CGLCC can actually come in very well. They have a huge supplier diversity program as one of their key pillars. So if you're interested in learning more about that, contact the CGLCC and they can direct you to which suppliers would fit into this category or not. The fifth essential element is to offer unique products and experiences. So you can showcase tourism products offerings with unique packages and authentic programs and experiences targeted to the LGBT plus travel market. And again, this can be large or small. I love the Agawa train as an example in Sault Ste. Marie, which does these beautiful train trips through the Agawa Canyon and shows the fall colors. And for a couple of years there, they offered a day or two where it was the rainbow train. So they targeted the LGBT plus market, and they decked out the train in rainbow paraphernalia and colors. They had a drag queen on there. So you can do some really fun things. But again, it doesn't have to be big. Another example of a small thing is the Norwegian Hiking and Trail Association in Norway. They just offer simply a bandana or a beanie in a rainbow color to hikers that would like to be identified as LGBT plus, but it allows for a conversation as they're hiking on the trails with fellow travelers who are LGBT plus as a way of recognizing each other if they want to. So very small, but very effective. Develop and support LGBT plus community events and festivals. Lots of the examples in the case studies we looked at support large pride festivals, or again, as I said, even small components of that, like I just mentioned in the Sheridan Centre Toronto example. Mentor and assist local LGBT plus community members and tourism businesses and allied organizations to develop their own LGBT plus tourism programs. I love an example of Niagara that I was involved in a year or two ago. Niagara Falls had never had a drag queen performance in Niagara, and the Creekside Winery partnered with a couple of local LGBT plus Airbnb owners, and they decided that they were going to create drag in the vineyard, and they got together, got their businesses together, and they created an actual event that was a first for Niagara, drag in the vineyard, and it was extremely well received. And lastly, foster links between LGBT plus and allied tourism businesses and organizations to encourage LGBT plus travel package collaborations. And the options there are limitless. Lots of things that you can do together. So don't be afraid to have those conversations. And then, of course, the last essential element is implement inclusive marketing strategies and promotional activities. And this is really important. You need to be authentic in all of your marketing and communications by featuring LGBT plus people, stories, imagery in both general and targeted campaigns. It can't be just a niche gay campaign. It has to be in all of your marketing. And one of the examples I just love on this is that the Air Canada in-flight video, as a piece of safety, but also marketing, they feature a same-sex couple, and I love that. So, I notice it every single time I'm on there, and it makes you feel included. So make sure you're doing those type of things. You can encourage affiliations with local, national, or international LGBT plus tourism marketing organizations that offer additional resources and support. IGLTA, the International Gay and Lesbian Travel Association, is a really well-known one and a great one to check out if you want to. Feature the LGBT plus information, imagery, package details, and relevant web links in general marketing. Again, have it throughout your marketing, not just in a niche area. And then if you want to, though, for targeted campaigns, great. Create an LGBT plus tourism microsite with web pages to provide fuller support and partnerships. Destination Toronto, for example, has a great website. They feature diverse images throughout, but then they also do have a niche microsite for people that really want to get in and explore Toronto's gay village and understand all the places that they can go. So that was the 6 essential elements. Carson, I'm going to give it to you for partnership development and community outreach.
Thank you, Lauren. So partnership development and community outreach, critical to a successful LGBT strategy is the active involvement and participation from both the local LGBT plus community as well as the industry stakeholders. So it is essential that fostering that collaborative cross-sector partnership really to engage the community at large and welcoming the LGBT travel market. So this can be done by few different ways of local government and government agencies and departments. So that could include the mayor, councillors, public health, safety, and emergency services, allied businesses, community at large. So that could be local BIAs and tourism-related businesses as well, such as retailers, restaurants, hotels, attractions, and tour operators. And then, of course, there's the residents who play an important role in the actual experience that the LGBT visitor has any destinations. You definitely want to make sure you're engaging the residents. And lastly, just the LGBT community itself. So that could include different LGBT organizations such as PFLAG, Pride and Business and Networking Groups, charitable LGBT organizations as well, and then other LGBT social groups, so sports groups, church groups, choirs, etc.
And Carson, really is, You and I gave an example, or had an example given to us on a previous training about a community that had invited their local police chief to get involved. And that was a really great story about how there'd been a lot of distrust between the community and the police. But by inviting the police to take part in this, they each learned a lot about each other and ended up being very successful. So the more people you can get on board, the better.
Great addition, Lauren. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
All right, next slide here. So engagement can be achieved in several ways. So communication, keeping the community and the industry informed of any LGBT tourism activities not only ensures they are aware of what is happening, but also allows for a much greater appreciation of the investment and the commitment that is actually being made. Next week, input. So actively seek input from the LGBT and allied community and tourism industry. This can be done a few different ways. Just make sure that you have that buy-in. It enables the destination to see where there are those opportunities for improvement. And then involvement. So fully engaging all stakeholders through participation on committees or meetings allows the team to obtain valuable insight and guidance while really indicating a vision of that sincere partnership that they have. So it really is recommended that an LGBT tourism committee be established with members from LGBT plus and allied community as well to develop that plan, vision, and those strategies, and just be there as additional voice. This committee can either be a coordinator independent of the local DMO, but really is there to support the community itself. All right, on to you, Lauren, for the next section there, section 7.
All right, the next section, we're just going to talk a little bit about what's available in terms of LGBT plus inclusion training for the tourism industry. And again, we've referenced this now with the part 1 and in part 2 again about how critical it is in terms of getting you LGBT plus travel market ready to deal with the inclusion training program for all staff. It's really critical in building awareness and customer service excellence. And it should go, again, senior management to frontline staff. Everybody should participate. The workshop curriculum offered by the CGLCC generally includes significance of LGBT plus issues within the context of broader diversity issues, one-on-one training to define the diversity of LGBT plus communities and provide an opportunity to ask questions, distinguishes the facts and stereotypes about LGBT plus people, the impact of homophobia, transphobia, and heterosexism in the workplace, why safe space is important and what it looks like, as we've also referenced throughout this training, that safe space is so key. And a number of other things in turning strategies and positive space and making sure that language is understood so that LGBT plus training, really the bottom line is, should support the generation of both a personal and organizational action plan to walk the inclusion talk. So it's important, so I guess a question to ask yourselves is, what would management do if there was an issue or a complaint from an existing guest that if there was a same-sex couple holding hands on the premises? What would happen? I think the commitment must be that everybody who works there must be clear and understand what the reaction and support would be throughout their entire organization for that. So the CGLCC, as referenced, offers a complete LGBT plus inclusion training program specifically for the tourism industry. It's a half-day facilitated workshop that will help you effectively understand, value, and serve LGBT plus employees and customers. So you can go to the CGLC website to look at that. Another one of the additional tools that we offer is the Destination Audit Program. The CGLCC's Destination Audit Program helps destinations and tourism business identify the strength of current or planned LGBT plus products, programs, partnerships, and community networks that form the foundation of your travel market strategy. So it's an assessment that looks at the current or planned products, critical market information, targeted services and programs, community networks, and they bring together a whole raft of community organizations and stakeholders to do it. So if you need more information on that, obviously reach out to the CGLCC and the tourism program manager as well. And then there's other resources too, all listed here, give you a chance to just have a quick little look. If any of those things are of interest to you, please, again, visit cglcc.ca/tourism. Happy to help with any of those resources. So the next section we want to talk about is LGBT plus tourism product development, sorry. And I'm going to hand this next slide over to Carson. Go ahead, Carson.
Oh, wow. All right. So in general, the LGBT traveler is looking for the same products and services as any other traveler, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to find those ways to adjust your products or experiences to speak specifically to the LGBT plus traveler. So some examples, car rental companies are waiving additional driver fees for same-sex partners. Hotels are offering his and his robes. So really is like making your offer relevant to the LGBT traveler, as opposed to just selling them the same products you would sell to anyone else. So the primary feature that the LGBT market looks for is safety, as we've already discussed. They want to be sure that they're going to be comfortable and welcome at a destination. So this really does go beyond the walls of a hotel or a restaurant. So are your attractions, restaurants, bars, taxis, are they do they ensure that comfort for the LGBT traveler? Something just to constantly ask yourself. It is important that all the businesses and the community at large are aware and engaged in your strategies we've talked about as well. Every interaction the LGBT traveler has with one of your businesses or residents really makes an impression and really impacts their overall experience with the destination. So when it comes to selling your destination, you obviously have a wide variety of products and services that you have at your disposal. So when first targeting your defined LGBT market segment, you need to focus on those products that differentiate your destination from the others. So identify and promote the products that are unique to your destination and can provide a truly exceptional experience for the LGBT traveler. So there's a list there. There's different LGBT festivals and events. So Pride festivals, ski and snowboard and coloring and film festivals, LGBT focused experiences with local authentic storytellers, LGBT groups. So there's those group tours, walking, cycling, boat and wine tours, etc. And then of course, there's those mainstream festivals and events that we've also talked about as well, that really can incorporate and offer the LGBT targeted programming. On to section 10 there, Lauren, for you.
Building the strategy. So this is actually a pretty meaty slide. There's lots of information to cover on this one. So these are all about the key considerations in terms of how you're going to build that strategy. So to be successful, again, it's essential to put together a strategy that identifies your goals, what you want to achieve, and all of those things. But what do you want to get out of it and why you're doing this are two really key questions. So in terms of the marketing considerations, again, as we've highlighted, it's really important. There is not one market, but several segments within the LGBT plus community. So when you look at this, you need to identify what segment of the broader LGBT plus market you think is the best match for your products. You may choose to focus on the broad market, but it's actually recommended that you narrow the market down to some commonalities. So you could target millennial gay men, you could do older and active lesbians, LGBT plus families. The more targeted you are, probably the better you'll be able to focus your marketing efforts and deliver an experience that's the perfect fit. Of course, price is always something you need to look at. And although the LGBT market, LGBT plus travel market has on average a greater discretionary income, you actually need to show the value in what you're asking them to spend their money on. So when pricing your products or packages, it's not enough to just say, I want this market and hike up the price. You need to have some added value to the product, something that an LGBT plus consumer will not be able to get otherwise. If they're going to pay a premium, they want to have something special. We call this going after the pink dollar, and you need to be a little bit aware of it. But as long as you're offering something extra and valuable, then that's okay. And then of course there's the packaging. So how do you put it together to market to this market? What makes an experience unique? I mean, anyone can call an overnight stay a Pride package and throw in some breakfast, but really what separates that from other hotels? So, I think you need to look at how the local LGBT plus community and tourism business have engaged in the development, planning, and strategy and delivery to make it something unique. So again, it doesn't have to be mind-blowing. I'll give one quick example. Again, I worked at the Sheraton Center in Toronto for a few years, and we put together a Pride package. And the Pride package that we elected to put together included a donation to the 519 Community Center. So it had a very nice community feel to it. So it included a few other bells and whistles, but it was that donation to the LGBT plus community that really made it stand out. And then once a year, we would go and give the donation to the center. So something simple. But here's the whole list of ways you could do it. You can focus on what makes your destination or business unique. You can feature authentic local LGBT plus stories, history, and people, which is really key. And a large market wants to hear about that. I gave an example in the business cases of Saskatoon that had done that, or in the essential elements. Identify the secret, hard to find places. Offer something that is targeted specifically to LGBT travelers, but that can also be open to others. It doesn't have to be segregated. Engage the LGBT plus communities, give them a role and make them an active participant in the experience itself. I've heard lots of stories of people doing walking tours where the local LGBT plus historian or whatever the case may be helped give the tour. Offer surprise and delights. Create products, packages, and experience that are offered in shoulder season and year round. I mean, this is a great thing about this market. The LGBT plus traveler will travel all times of the year. So if you're looking to improve shoulder season business, this is a great market to go after. And then identify your package components, accommodation, transportation, activities. It's really important to, show how you're using LGBT plus suppliers that actively promote the market. It's important to show what you're doing from a charitable consideration. Show what you're doing. And one example I really like about the supplier diversity, which in some cases is hard to do, Out Adventures, who do international adventure trips. Sometimes they go into areas that the people they're dealing with, they're not diverse, and it's not something that they do. It's 4 people offering camel rides in the middle of the desert. But what they do in order to create that safe and secure experience is they insist that the suppliers that they work with, if they don't already engage in supplier diversity or have a diversity and inclusion program, they put them through a mini program of their own, because it's so important that their travelers feel safe with those operators when they travel. So it can't be anything but just make sure that you're creating that safe space. So overall, this is where you can bring in your strengths that are identified in your program, engage your stakeholders, consult your committee, leverage the input, and come up with packaging that really makes sense. And then, of course, once you've got the price and the package and what you're going to target, you need to figure out how you're going to get the word out. So distribution. So research has shown that 36% of Canadian LGBT plus travelers always book directly with travel providers like airlines and hotels through the company website or by telephone. So again, really important that your LGBT plus packages are bookable and marketable on your site, and that again, you're showing that diverse imagery and inclusion throughout your site because these travelers are going directly to book. 9% of Canadian LGBT plus travelers always book directly with an LGBT plus tour operator or travel agent. So you can get to know who they are. One way to begin connecting is through the International LGBT plus Travel Association, IGLTA, which I mentioned earlier. They have thousands of members around the world, so it's a really great place to start. And then, like mainstream travelers, LGBT plus travelers also book frequently through mainstream online travel agencies. But some OTAs offer a selection of LGBT plus recommended accommodations and some don't. So I would look into your business or property and see how it's being promoted on those OTAs and make sure that you're being authentic as you go there. So those are a lot of the key considerations. With that, I'm going to take a glass of water and pass it back over to Carson.
Have a break, Lauren. That's a big slide. All right, so top sources of travel information for Canadian LGBT travelers. There are numerous advertising channels available when looking to reach that LGBT plus consumer. So as when deciding any advertising mix, it is important to know exactly where your chosen segment really does seek that travel information. So those who use the LGBT specific resources when planning leisure trips, there's 3 top sources. So LGBT plus influencers, LGBT plus apps, and LGBT plus travel forums and media. So with that, there are some stats here. We had 76%, really majority of the LGBT travelers, 76% would travel to a destination if they know the destination has that friendly reputation. And then friends and family recommendations were really up top as well. So you really want to integrate that into your message, as well as promoting official tourism destination websites, hotel airline websites, travel blogs, forums, and then of course other vacation rental websites as well. And to do a deep dive into a few here, so websites. Diving into websites and social media, websites, research indicates that approximately 77% of Canadian LGBT travelers consult destination websites when researching their travel plans. So Is your website speaking to them? Is there content on your site that's specifically targeted to an LGBT traveler? So by incorporating the LGBT content and the imagery that we're going to talk about on your site, you really are demonstrating that commitment that you have and the inclusiveness of the destination and the business. So you just want to be actively welcoming the LGBT traveler. So content can be as subtle as having a rainbow icon or a little logo from an LGBT affiliation. It could be a page that's dedicated to interesting, relevant information within the LGBT community. There are numerous things that you can be done on your website to showcase that diversity and inclusion of the LGBT community. Then, of course, there's social media. Social media and influencers play a huge role in both the planning phase as well as during the actual travel experience. You want to make sure that you keep that content relevant. So not all content has to be LGBT specific, though. They want to know about your mainstream events just as much as anyone else does. But by making your content relevant to the LGBT travelers, you really are ensuring that you get their attention. And so making sure that you use those channels that are specific to your target segment, and if possible, really just try to tailor that message. An example, if there's a music festival taking place in your destination, try highlighting an artist that is well known within the LGBT community. Although it may not be an LGBT specific content, it is content that is still relevant to that traveler. And then, of course, we've talked about imagery, and we'll talk about, again, the authentic and enticing images of LGBT leaders, business owners, community members, and other travelers are just a really powerful promotional tool and really should be used across marketing platforms as well as collateral. We just want to continually remember just to be authentic, be true to what your destination or business does and what your business offers, and be honest about what LGBT plus traveler will experience.
LGBT plus targeted consumer shows are obviously a great way to reach the travel market. There are several shows or events that provide an opportunity. You could do travel specific expos for the LGBT plus market, lifestyle events like same-sex wedding shows, or larger festivals events like showcasing at Pride. When choosing the show, you need to ensure that there's a fit between the target market of the show and your target markets, like psychographically, geographically, whatever the case may be. But for example, if you've decided that you're going to focus on couples, then it would make sense potentially to go to a same-sex wedding show as a great place for your foray into consumer shows. But at the end of the day, when you're there, what you do need to remember is, like everything else we've talked about, use the right imagery, appropriate, authentic, and enticing collateral that is speaking directly to this market, and make sure that the staff that are there know how to speak to this market, that they've gone through that sensitivity and inclusion training. It's incredibly important. Next slide is about media relations. So again, this is a great way to get the message out. Media plays an integral role in the purchase decision and travel planning of LGBT plus travelers. They consult both mainstream and LGBT plus media on information about where to go and what to do. Travel influencers are very popular with LGBT plus travelers, and there's a lot of them out there. So if you have a media relations team, ensure that they start using LGBT plus media and LGBT plus writers in their contact lists. Encourage your team to work with the local community to find stories of interest to the traveler, such as an upcoming event or that history or story that's so interesting. You can send out media releases, host a fan trip. That's a great idea to get, have those local LGBT or have locally LGBT plus travel writers and influencers come, experience your business, experience your destination for free, and then write about it. And again, make sure you're incorporating the LGBT plus content into all of your media kits to showcase how inclusive your destination or tourism business is. The key is to not only tell your LGBT plus story to the LGBT plus press and media, but to all the media, mainstream or not. Just really show you're transparent, really show you're behind that market. So for a comprehensive list of LGBT plus journalists to get you started, visit the Association of LGBT plus Journalists at nlgja.org. And also just keep your eyes open. Again, have that media relations team look who is in your market and doing things. There are lots of LGBT plus journalists in the mainstream media who would be interested to learn what's going on. So it's always important to include them. Overall, the marketing recommendations, not a surprise to hear it. The ideal goal is for fully integrated strategy in terms of your LGBT strategy with your overall marketing strategy. You have to incorporate that imagery and messaging into your regular marketing activities. It shows your commitment to the market. And by integrating rather than speaking separately to the market, you're demonstrating that you're invested in them and you see them as important. And that is going to be the key to success in this market. Over to Carson on how you can measure your success.
Measurement tools. This is actually one of my favorite slides. I just think there's so much great information in here. So there's several performance measurement tools you can employ to ensure that your LGBT strategy is properly implemented. Website and or LGBT focused web page analytics. If you have a specific LGBT content page on your site, you can easily track how many visitors are going to that page. So likewise, you can also track where they are finding you on the web. Social media likes and tweets, simply tracking the number of Facebook likes or Twitter followers you have allows you to measure your social media success. Reviews, ratings, and comments. You can easily see who's talking about you and what they're saying through social media channels and those other reviews. Bookings and sales. If you have an LGBT package on offer, then the number of sales would be a useful measure. Media hits, tracking the number of media mentions. It's a great measurement tool to really gauge what level of success you have with that strategy. Promotional contest engagement. So promotional contests or prize giveaways provide an effective marketing and engagement tool as well, which really does allow that LGBT traveler to provide their information and you to be able to collect it and analyze it. And then of course, there's the LGBT partnerships. So the number of active and engaged parties, partners you have in the LGBT community really do allow for that strong indicator of interest and potential for success that you have. Collaborations with the LGBT community at large is also this really strong measurement factor. So the travel industry and travel preferences are constantly evolving, as you already know. So really incorporating them really into your regular evaluations, into your plans and that strategy, and sharing the results with the LGBT community and the tourism industry itself will really help drive those improvements, innovation, and lead to great success.
Some of the places that you can look for some of those key LGBT plus partnerships are different organizations and media in Canada. So just to give you an example, you can see some of the local chambers. Obviously you reach out to CGLCC already, so you wouldn't be here, but here are some more of the regional chambers that you can reach out to. There's also some key organizations nationally in Canada. EGAL Canada is the national organization that advances equality and justice for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans-identified people and their families across Canada. Fierté Canada Pride is the umbrella organization for all the prides across Canada. There's PFLAG Canada, which is Parents, Families, and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, and it's a nationwide organization that deals with sexual orientation and gender identity issues from a family perspective. And then Pride at Work. So through dialogue, education, and thought leadership, Pride at Work Canada empowers Canadian employers to build workplaces that celebrate all employees, regardless of gender expression, gender identity, and sexual orientation. And then, of course, there's the international LGBT plus tourism organizations. I already referenced IGLTA. There's also Community Marketing and Insights, which provides tag-approved labels for accommodations and making sure that different accommodations effectively reach and sensitively serve the LGBT plus community. And then, of course, there's LGBT plus media. And this is not an exhaustive list. There are more, and it is constantly changing. I just heard on a travel market seminar the other day about La Hava, a new gay and lesbian travel magazine that's coming into the market this year. So, you know, look at the tried and true, but also keep your eyes open for new opportunities. And any one of these groups would be more than happy to partner and help promote what you want to get done. Next is the end. So that's it. Thank you very much. That is the end of part 2 of the Travel Market Ready seminar for the tourism program. We thank you, myself and Carson, both for joining us today. And if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to the tourism manager at CGLCC or contact them through their website. Thank you very much. And get Travel Market Ready.